welcome to Cardcore Gamer. Now, board gaming has been around for a hell of a long time, and in its modern format it's quite easy to forget just how old it is. This game dates back from when I was 3 years old. It had 7 editions between 1985 and 1997, and then Chessex, the dice manufacturer, sat on the licence for 15 years before Fantasy Flight produced a new version in 2012. But is an oldie still a goodie? Let's look at Wiz-War and find out. Wiz-War is a game about 4 warring wizards in the bowels of the earth in a specially constructed battle dungeon, slinging magic spells, fireballs, expanding walls out of the floor and dropping stone blocks and raising thorn bushes and creating objects. The best thing about Wiz-War is the fact that the things you do, the spells you play, have a physical effect on the board. There's some real great interaction that you go, right, I'm going to play this, and you place down a stone block in the space, and you go, right, there is now a stone block on the board. I have changed the board. There is a card that rotates a quarter of the board. I mean, there's so much interaction that goes beyond the usual card play of, well, I'm going to play this and you're going to suffer. It's just great to be able to actually manifest things on the board from just playing your spells. It gives so much theme and so much life to the idea of you having this hand of magic spells, which are your incredible sort of wizardly thoughts, and actually enacting them on the board and not just playing a card to do a thing. That is great. And Fantasy Flight back this up with a very, very nice production that we've kind of come to expect from them. With the mutations where your wizard changes form, they've actually provided miniatures that you can swap out, and when you change form, again, on the board, physically you change form. That in itself is a lovely little thing. It's a nice touch, and it really, really brings the game to life a bit. But this game has not changed much from its origins as something that was literally photocopied with screen-printed boards and came in a plastic bag. It's technically a lot better, but rules-wise, Fantasy Flight have actually changed it for the worse, in my opinion. Full disclosure, I have not played previous versions of Wiz-War. I have never played it until just recently. And the one game I had, it got me hooked. Fantasy Flight's changes have introduced some more interesting thoughts and decisions and interesting concepts into the basic game. But they've also skewed it. It's no longer a Wiz-War, it's more of a Wiz-race. The way you win the game is to score 2 points, where you get a point from killing a wizard, and you get a point if you can steal a treasure and put it on your home space. So if you steal 2 treasures or kill 2 wizards, you've won the game, or a combination. But the thing is that in the newer version, the Fantasy Flight rules, the strategy of killing somebody is totally nowhere compared to the one of running, grabbing a treasure and running back. This is because of the way the cards work. In a turn, you can play any number of the green neutral spells, any number of energy spells and objects, and 1 attack. So it's easier to use an energy card to boost your movement, and another spell to allow you to pick up the treasure for free, which usually ends your turn, than it is to put together a big combo of spells and attack. Because say you put together a clever hand of like 3 different spells, and you're like, right, this is really going to hurt somebody. And then they just go, I've got a shield, you've wasted 3 cards. And cards matter, you want to be getting the most out of your hand. There is a hand management aspect inherent in the game. Especially because there's another thing that Fantasy Flight did. The energy cards, these allow you to power up either your movement or spells. But some of the cards now do double duty, and this is an interesting thing because you can either play the spell for its effect or you can play it for its energy value. You have to think, which is more valuable to me? The game is set up in such a way that running and stealing and running back is just far, far less risky than combat, and it discourages combat, and that is a huge problem. Because while the game has become a good race game, it feels muted. It feels like the game has had its crusts cut off. There's no real chance that you're going to whittle down the 15 points of health it takes to kill another wizard. The good news is that in the back of the rulebook, Fantasy Flight include variant rules that are the original rule set, and after playing the Fantasy Flight version a few times and being happy, if not wowed, I took the plunge. Now, combining all of the spells into one big deck, using all of the original rules, oh my goodness, this game comes to life. Everything lights up. You can confidently set up combos of spells and blast fiery darts at people. You can destroy a wall and then throw a lightning bolt and raise a new wall and watch the lightning bolt bounce around and electrocute people. You can do so many things that feel like you've done something clever. And it is a chaotic game. There's not much in the way of dice rolling. There's one d4 that exists just to resolve some random effects. It's all card play, and yes, it's luck of the draw. But it's about making do with your hand and seeing what you can do and how clever you can be in constructing mechanisms of destruction and chaos. The other thing the original rules do is that with Fantasy Flight's rules, if you created, say, a magical wall, you could dispel it by just discarding it. In these rules, if you create the magical wall, it's then part of the board, which means that you have to be more careful. You can create things, you can create a thorn bush, or you can create a stone wall, or whatever, but you've also got to be wary that somebody else, in another turn, might use mind control to make you walk through that thorn bush 5 or 6 times to hurt yourself. Everything has more consequences. The board changes and stays changed. It just feels so much more satisfying to know that what you do has more of a permanent effect, and there's less cheesy play of being able to bring something into the board to hurt somebody else and then take it away again so it doesn't hurt you. If you don't like chaotic games, if you don't like games which have an uncontrollable, a sort of wacky element to them, then you will not like Wiz-War so much. Even though it's a short game, it's not intended to be a long and deep and heavy game, there isn't much in the way of strategy. You are playing in a reactionary manner. You're not planning things too far ahead of time, because next turn somebody could play a card that steals all of your magic spells off you, and that's that. So, yeah, it's not for people who are into their strategic and sort of games that build up. This is really very much about playing cards, smacking each other about, and having a bit of a laugh for 45 minutes. And as such, it succeeds, and is in fact still a good system. The game works well, and it works just as well, if not better, than some more recent sort of chaotic titles. There is a funny feeling that this game is kind of like a card game that happens to have a board. I'm fairly certain that for the price you could get a superior card game or a superior board game. I got it on sale from Grimtree Games, thanks very much, and for the price I paid I'm happy with it. I wouldn't go crazily over the odds, because what all you're paying for really is the production value. What you get is a very, very fun game, a quick game, and a light game. It's a take that, bash each other about style game. And another annoyance about it, I have to bring this up. The game kind of future-proofs itself. It defines terms on the cards so that later on, when the inevitable expansion is released, you don't have to retcon the cards, you don't have to rewrite what's been written. But that annoys me, because in the rulebook it defines creatures. It tells you that are creatures that spells can happen to, and then it tells you that creatures are not in the basic game. So you know for a fact they're going to sell you something later on, and they've told you they're going to sell you it later on. That bugs me. I mean, I'm a sucker. I can't wait for them to bring out the creatures so I can send hordes of monsters around and annoy people. But at the same time, it feels like downloadable content. It feels like a bit of a kick in the teeth. It feels like, hey guys, guess what you're not getting yet, and you're going to have to buy later. Fantasy Flight are buggers for releasing expansions, but this is a little cynical even for them. Anyway, that aside, so problems with Wiz-War, things that you might not like. Well, it only runs up to 4 players at the moment, and while the expansion will probably introduce 5 or maybe even 6 players, I just wouldn't want to play it with more than 5. I really wouldn't. I think it would outstay its welcome. I think there'd be too much back and forth and nothing would get resolved. I think Fantasy Flight's tweaks are interesting, unnecessary, and do not change the game for the better, but the one thing that is good there is they've themed the magic into 6 decks, and the idea is you draft 3 decks and a generic one, so each time you play it with their rules you get a different flavour, but still you're just getting a taste of the better game. It's Fantasy Flight classic case of meddling and tinkering with an original design that just doesn't need changing. There's anything else that I find sort of annoying about Wiz-War? It perhaps is that, I don't know, if you play it with the wrong people, it can be a bit of a dud. You've got to play with people who are happy to take a beating and fight back. You know, it is possible to be eliminated from the game. If everybody beats on one player, they are doomed. You know, you will die. And as such, this has a particular audience. So it's not going to be a game for everybody. If you introduced a new player to this game and people just trounced them, they probably wouldn't want to play this and maybe wouldn't want to play any other game again, because you can be not exactly vicious, but you can be pretty brutal. I mean, you get 15 health, and without even really trying, I put 8 points of damage on somebody in a single turn. With 3 other players, you know, that's 2 more people who can smack them about if they want to, and they could be dead very fast. So, what do I think of it in total, especially given the sort of the historical context? Well, while it has some tricky things to learn, mostly about the card breakdown of the spells and the nomenclature, as an aside, Fantasy Flight made some of the cards do double duty. So you've got the card that can act as energy or as a spell, and that's cool, as I mentioned before. The problem there is that a card's default energy is 1, but if it also has an energy value of 2, that means its energy is 1 or 2, depending whether you play it as a spell or whether you play it to boost another spell. Not the smartest move. Explaining it is not always easy. I'm getting kind of off track. Wiz-War, to me, as somebody who hasn't played it in its previous iterations, stands up as a good, fun, lightweight, very interactive game design. I love the fact that what you do has an effect on the board and you can see what it is you've done. The main thing, I think, that drives this game, and the pinnacle achievement, is the fact that with the spells, somebody had an idea of what they wanted the spell to do and then made the mechanics for it, rather than making a bunch of mechanics and slapping names on them. And this is perhaps what makes the heart and the soul of the game. Somebody was trying to think, how can I make a spell feel like what it says it is? When you play the cards and you have that effect, it feels like you've done something. So maybe it just pulls off the ultimate trick of the chaotic game by making you feel clever and like you've made an intelligent play and that you've achieved something, when secretly it's just a random hand of cards and you were doing the best you could. So that's Wiz-War. It's old. Old and makes me feel old. But you know what? To me, it feels fresh, it feels new, and it's fun if you've got the right crowd and you're not expecting something too heavy. And I'll see you next time.